Mrs. Barnett, Mrs. Stollard,
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Okay. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I am going to have a moment of silence, and if you haven't silenced your cell phone, now is the time or a perfect time to do it. Okay, moving on to discussion items, achievement profiles update.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. So we wanted to start off this evening discussing our achievement profiles. This Friday, you will see letter grades come out for all schools throughout the state of Arizona. And we wanted to get ahead of it and give you guys in the community a little bit of a preview here, but then also talk a little bit about some of our next steps. For me, when I was hired to the district, one of the areas that I really was interested in looking into was our academic achievement, and then trying to identify what are some strategies that we could begin to incorporate for some quick wins, and then those schools that are already doing some solid strategies. And so I'll hand this over to Dr. Haid, who will bring up Dr. Ledette. So go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Lafitte. Madam President, members of the board, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Suhi Ledette, our new Director of Curriculum Instruction, to talk about our academic progress review. I'd also like to thank Mr. Brian DeLessio in the audience who collaborated with her and the team putting this together. And then, of course, thank all of our audience members who came to our special meeting waiting for, I think it's this. So.
Good evening, President Soshnick, governing board members, Superintendent Dr. Lafitte, and Littleton community. Thank you for your continued support of our schools, staff, and students in the best district. Tonight, I am pleased to present our annual review of our academic progress for the 2024-2025 school year, a little nervous, with a focus on school letter grades and the processes in place that will continue to drive student achievement. Let's begin with an overview of how schools and districts earn their letter grades. The Arizona Department of Education calculates these grades using a combination of growth, proficiency, acceleration readiness measures, and English language learner progress. The methodology for calculation stayed the same as the previous school year, with a breakdown as follows: growth with 50%, proficiency 30%, acceleration readiness with 10%, and ELL progress 10% for the overall final grade. Here is an overview of our school letter grades over the past 4 academic school years. Our schools have demonstrated both stability and improvement. The school grades for the 24-25 academic year are also currently preliminary. The final determinations will be presented by the State Board of Education using the proposed cut scores adopted yesterday during their monthly meeting. The official release of the grades to the public is expected the evening of October 31st. What you see are the expected letter grades of our schools and district. You'll notice 2 schools that are under review. Let's take a closer look at the estimated school letter grades for the 2024-2025 academic year. We are planning to appeal the letter grades for 2 schools, Littleton Prep Academy and Littleton STEM Academy. Littleton Prep Academy's initial designation is a D. However, due to the school being only 2 years old, we have found that the school was not able to earn full points possible. After having some preliminary meetings with Arizona Department of Education, it was determined that the Littleton school letter grade could be appealed. Some of the concerns that prompted our appeal are that Littleton Prep Academy in the 24-25 school year was only in its 2nd year of existence and therefore not eligible to earn certain points. Another point is that with student population growing, we're adding a grade level every year, which impacts their overall student count, which affects their subgroups that did not have at least 10 students that were present for the full academic year, or FAY. Littleton STEM Academy has preliminarily earned a school letter grade of B. They are 2/100ths of a point away from an A, with 83.98 points. We also plan on appealing the Littleton STEM Academy school letter grade based on their EL proficiency on the AZELA. AZELA stands for the Arizona English Language Learner Assessment, which is a standards-based assessment used across Arizona to measure the English language proficiency of students whose primary language is not English, and serves two main purposes. One, placement in the appropriate EL program, and two, annual reassessment of English proficiency. Littleton STEM Academy also experienced external circumstances during the AASA state testing, which the state board may consider during the appeal. Specifically, during a testing session, a fire alarm went off, triggering a school-wide evacuation. Lastly, you will notice that the Littleton Online Academy is a C. Due to a declining interest by the community post-COVID, we have decreased enrollment opportunities one grade level each year, with this year only serving grades in 7th and 8th. As it currently stands, we will not have enough students to generate a letter grade for this current academic school year. I know what you're thinking. So what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to increase schools and district grades and ensure, number one, that all of our students are learning? Our work is guided by the 4 essential professional learning community PLC questions. Number one, what do we want our students to learn? Number 2, how will we know when they have learned it? 3, how will we respond when students do not learn? And 4, how will we respond when students already learn it? You will see the 3 goals from last school year. This very important question number 1, what do we want students to learn, yields portions of our district goals and initiatives. These goals are designed to increase student achievement and foster a culture where every student is recognized as a learner. And I am happy to report on the following measures. All schools aim for a 10% growth on the K-3 district reading assessment. I'm proud to report that 8 out of 9 schools met or exceeded this goal. For grades 4 through 8th math, our target was a 66% growth rate, and 7 out of 9 schools met or exceeded this goal. Attendance is a key indicator of engagement, and all schools met the average daily attendance rate of 95% or better. Finally, family engagement is essential, and all schools achieved the 10% growth in family engagement. And how awesome is that? To touch on the second PLC question, how will we know when students have learned it? We measure student learning through the Arizona Academic Standards Assessment, AASA, our Arizona State Assessment, and other evidence of mastery. Here are some highlights on the growth portion, which, as a reminder, is worth 50% of the total methodology for calculations of letter grades. Collier Business Academy saw a 16% increase in grade 5 math. Estrella Vista STEM Academy achieved a 31% increase in grade 8 math. Littleton STEM Academy posted a 13% increase in grade 6 ELA, and Tres Rios Service Academy saw an increase of 26% in grade 5 ELA. These are a small sample of learning highlights, and we will continue to identify the needs per school and overall district to continue to strive for academic excellence. This table highlights schools that have met or exceeded the state average in the student proficiency portion. And as a reminder, proficiency is 30% of the total methodology for letter grade calculation. Under the ELA section of the Arizona Academic Standards Assessment, you will note that Tres Rios outperformed in grades 3 ELA the state average of 36 with 39%. Littleton Online ELA Grade 5 outperformed the state of 37 with 67%. Littleton STEM Academy ELA Grade 6 outperformed the state of 41 with 48%. Littleton Online ELA Grade 7 outperformed the state of 42% proficiency with 50%. Collier Business Academy ELA Grade 8 outperformed the state of 40% with 45%. Estrella Vista STEM Academy ELA Grade 8 outperformed the state of 40% with 44%. And Littleton STEM Academy Grade 8 ELA outperformed the state of 40% with 49%. This table highlights schools within our district that have met or exceeded the state average in student proficiency on the math section of the Arizona Academic Standards Assessment, AASA. Tres Rios Service Academy outperformed in math grade 3, maintained the 42% average as a state. Collier Business Academy math grade 6 outperformed the state of 29 with 42%. And Estrella Vista STEM Academy Math Grade 8 outperformed the state of 27% with 32%. The third question is, well, how do we respond when students do not learn? When students struggle, we respond through targeted interventions throughout the PLC process. Collier Business Academy and Estrella Vista STEM Academies have both exited additional state support, demonstrating the effectiveness of the use of our strategies. Congratulations to the two schools that have worked extremely hard with intentionality to be dismissed and are no longer in state-identified need. We will continue to partner with Clinton STEM Academy through targeted professional development and continued work in professional learning communities. In thoughts of the last PLC question number 4, well, how will we respond when students already know it? We must recognize this need and plan for different opportunities for students who have already mastered the grade level content. For students who have already mastered grade level content, we offer multiple pathways depending on their mastery level and their grade level, such as acceleration pathways, community preschool program, curriculum extensions, differentiated instruction, flexible grouping, and gifted and talented programs. Did you know that with the board's approval and support of our community preschool program, it is making a significant difference of our students? Our preschool students who attend our community preschools scored almost 22 percentile points higher on the FastBridge screener than those who did not. 22% higher. Wow, talk about a proven, effective pathway that will help our students beginning in their foundational years. Looking ahead, our focus remains on learning, collaboration, and results orientation. We will continue to expand our community preschool program and provide ongoing professional learning in math, ELA, and writing with AI. We are strengthening PLC structures and processes to increase support for subgroups including special education, EL, and gifted students. Our commitment to a results orientation means using data to drive proficiency and growth across all of our schools. Thank you so much for your partnership and dedication to our students' successes. We're building a culture of learning, collaboration, and achievement here at Littleton Elementary School District, where we are building tomorrow together. I am happy to answer any questions from the board as this concludes my presentation for the 2024-2025 academic progress.
And if I can just, excuse me, before we ask any questions, thank Dr. Haid, her team, Dr. Ledette, but really the work has been our campuses, and all of our administrators are represented here. All of our sites are represented by administration, but we have almost a large chunk of Estrella Vista contingency here as well. And so I'd like to congratulate you guys on achieving that A. I know that was a long time coming and hard work, so congratulations for that work. Dr. Ledette mentioned PLC structures and intentionality. So when I came in, one of the things I mentioned was trying to identify those quick wins. And when you look at the data that was presented earlier, can you go back to slide, I think, 3, Dr. Ledette? That one, yeah. When you look at that one, you start to see the patterns and the trends that take place, and you look at what's happening. And what we started to see is those schools that had the consistency or started to see those increases, they had a little bit better, they were a little bit further along in the PLC process. And we talked about that and discussed what would that look like if we supported each other district-wide, and how could we help each other win. For me, I always believe we're all in this together. And for us, and I take a sports analogy approach. We watch basketball games, a basketball player falls, but what's the first thing that happens? His teammate comes to pick him up. Here, we're trying to help pick each other up, lift each other up. And so those schools that have been on that pathway have been great resources for those that are still working through those processes. And for me, I know within the next few years, as a district, that letter grade will jump up significantly through this work. So thank you.
Mr. Sinaceros?
Well, first, thank you for the work, all that your department has done and everything. It's great and amazing to see just the data in terms of where we've been moving as a district with proficiency. Now, I applaud all the progress. I applaud it all, but I think looking at it, we are moving in a trajectory that has shown our progress to go a little more down than past years. And that concerns me just individually, but obviously I don't have the answer to that as an individual board member. That's for our educators and our staff to have that, because they're the ones who are doing the work day to day, and our students. So eventually, it doesn't be now, but eventually I would love to hear that furthermore of just what are the plans to work with those sites that have lost that progress forward. But obviously I'm somebody who respects later grades, but doesn't believe that they make our schools what they are. Our schools are what they are, the cultures they are. So yeah, that's just my comments. Thank you for the presentation.
Vice President Siniceros, thank you so much for your comment. What a relief that you represent our district in having that adage that school letter grades don't make the school or the people who are working it. So thank you, and I applaud you for those thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item B, school student uniforms.
Okay, Madam President, members of the board. So this next item is an item, prior to me coming in, I had heard a little bit about uniforms and governing board questions, concerns, and really looking into uniforms and what that would look like for the future of Littleton. And so we had a few questions on some data that we were looking for. So I'll hand that over to Ms. Garrison, who will talk about some of the next steps that have taken place and then get any future guidance from the governing board on uniforms.
Thank you, Madam President, Governing Board. Last March, you may recall, we looked at, we were talking about uniforms. We looked at the current dress code policy. We took a little look down memory lane. We talked about how we got started with the uniforms and how the practice has evolved and how things got changed over the years. And it seemed that the board was interested in digging deeper at that meeting, so the board helped design a survey that went to students, staff, and families at the end of last year. The survey was 10 questions, and the first one was really just the identifier, whether you were student, staff, or parent. This slide shows you how many in each category responded to the survey. Students in grades 5 through 8 were asked to take the survey. We had approximately 2,900 students at that time, so about 73% of the students responded. We had roughly 3,900 families with 1,787 responding, so that gave us about 46% of the parents that we expected to respond, did respond. And we ended the year with just over 300 employees, so about 43% of the staff responded. Oh, did I say 500?
600.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We ended this year with just over 600, that's right, 600 employees, so that meant about 43 responded. Thank you, Dr. Lafitte. This next slide shows you the results separated out by each group. Now, what you're looking at here is the positive responses, the agreements with those statements. For example, on the first one, it said uniforms make school safer. So you can see that 72% of the parents agreed with that, 74% of the staff agreed with that, 42% of the students agreed with that. So I just wanted to make sure that this was clear, that that was the agreement with the statements that we gave them. Make kids more comfortable and confident. You see parents and staff were matched evenly there. Kids came in at 36%. Reduce bullying, 72, 73, 44 respectively. And I won't read them all to you because I know you've had these all week. You've probably had some time to go through these. But it is agreement there. On the next slide, I have been fascinated with this since March, since we talked about it. There's so much data out there to look at, and I'm assuming you guys were looking too. Interesting. So we picked some of the stats that we thought you would be interested in, and I'd like to start with one that isn't on the slide, but interesting. Uniforms are not the norm across the country, but they are in our area. You had an attachment there to show you in our area who is using them. We attached the chart so you could see that. Recent statistics show about 20% of all public schools do require uniform, and most of those are elementary schools. The national data shows right now that more elementary schools are going toward uniforms. But look at what's on the screen. Teacher retention improves when students wear uniforms. Uniforms reduce the visible social economic differences, but students report a better sense of belonging when they don't wear the uniforms. And I thought it was important to note here, there's really no strong evidence that uniforms affect student achievement at all. And parents are split on whether it reduces or increases expenses. And students report feeling, this is across the nation, students report feeling less able to express their identity or individuality when wearing uniforms. And those are all things that you guys talked about last March. So what we did is we decided on 4 things to start your discussion, because this is a discussion item tonight. So if you'd let me go through all 4. These are 4 things that came to my mind as I was reading the information. First of all, the first one is we can keep things just as they are. This would keep things consistent, and it does align with the survey responses from the adult responses. There's really nothing compelling in the survey data telling us to make a change. On the other hand, it is a long-standing practice, and it may not reflect a goal for increased self-expression. The next thought is we could modify the uniform guidelines and provide some flexibility in what the kids are wearing. This could promote equity and inclusion and maybe seem a little bit more modern. The con is it takes time to get that input, and it would be very important that we have shared clarity of what those flexible changes would mean. On the next slide, another thing for you to discuss, we could also remove the uniform requirement and instead define a dress code. This encourages trust, reduces enforcement time, and supports self-expression. The challenge with this, again, is it takes time to define, and we don't always agree on modesty or what's acceptable. That just takes a time. Because even though the national trends are saying we're going toward uniforms, the districts report that it takes time to build that with your community. It's successful whether you have them or not, depending on what your community wants. And finally, just another thing for you to consider, another discussion point, is to pilot a change. This could mean we run a test on a select school or select schools or a grade level before making a district-wide decision. And just like all the other things I've given you, there's pros and cons. The pros of this are we have time to collect feedback. It minimizes disruption and identifies implementation changes. The challenge is the inconsistencies across the school and the way that we do school choice. So could lead to some confusion. But the bottom line is, uniforms, none of the research that I could find, they're not a magic solution for anything. There isn't any data that says they hurt or that they help. What is certain is that when we're implementing a change like this, we should proceed carefully and build our tomorrow with our community. Turn it back over to you.
So this is a discussion item. The administration is just looking for feedback from us on what we're interested in of the 4 options, or if we have another option, one of us has another option.
I first want to start saying wow. Our community really showed up and gave us their feedback. Over 4,000 plus people, majority of that being student responses. That was the biggest group that showed up in their survey, and I think that's big. I want to go back to just the survey results, if we could. As you can see, obviously the adults seem to feel more confident on that. They feel it makes it feel safer, that kids are comfortable, reduces bullying. Then when we get to Saves Families Monies, gets a little more divided and in the middle, even among students as well. And I think that's kind of what caught my eye the most, was how not even a majority of families agreed, based on this survey of the 46% of our parents that responded, agreed that it actually saved families more money. And even students agreed with that statement as well. And I thought that was pretty big. The cost difference as well was kind of low, moderate responses. But I think what was really interesting is how even parents and staff were divided among help create a sense of community and belonging among the uniforms. Staff and parents were divided. And then only 36% of our students, 25% of our students agree that it actually makes them feel that they have a sense of community and belonging in their schools. And I thought that was really big to me, in terms of our feedback our kids had to say. I think that was one of the biggest things that just stood out to me individually, was how our students really showed up, and they were really passionate about this, and they really want to see us do something about it. Right now, as the adults in the room, that's left to us to make. They gave us their feedback, and now we have to figure out what we're going to do. And I thought that's really cool to just see the beauty of our students showing up and responding and being a part of this process was really cool. And that's kind of, I think, I'll kind of start my discussion before moving forward with any other things, directions.
Thank you so much for all of this hard work and getting all these statistics and information. With regard to where it says creates a sense of community and belonging, I guess I was kind of confused because with the schools that was compared to, they wear the same uniform we wear. So, for example, the students from Academy of Math and Science, they wear the same uniform that Littleton would wear, the same, that anyone else. So I guess I'm divided as a, as a community member, as a parent with children in this district, but then also, respecting the fact that children do need to have a sense of individuality. So I guess, I don't know, it was something else too. With regard to, I know that there are some students who have shared that it's hard for them based on their body style. So for example, a uniform looks a certain way on some students, it looks a different way on other students who have a different body style, and it kind of causes a stigma, a bit of discomfort with regards to them having to tuck their shirts in when they're not necessarily very comfortable with their body style. Then it kind of draws attention to parts of their body that they're not, feeling good about. So I don't know, I just think that this is really something we need to think about. And also being mindful of the fact that it does in the morning make things a lot easier. So I don't know, I'm conflicted.
I also want to thank you for all your hard work, because that was a lot of data diving there. I'm with Ms. Barnett on some of them, especially the body type. I know from working in the district and from being a parent myself that there are a lot of kids that even when others think they have a perfect body, they don't feel they do. So the tucking in of the shirt is a really big deal. I now work at a school where we don't have uniforms, and it was an eye-opener. The first couple weeks, my mouth just stayed open all the time. But I like the fact that I think, we should do some more digging into this. I didn't feel it saved me money as a parent for my child. I usually forgot to buy her clothes when the seasons changed because she wore a uniform every day, so I forgot to get the regular clothes that she would need. I'm all for opening it up a little bit to, you know, change it a little bit to let them be more expressive about their individuality and stuff like this. So I think we should do some more research on this and see what we can do.
So speaking as a parent of a student who does have sensory issues, I will say that our uniforms make life just a little bit harder for her in her everyday life. And so I, as a parent, am very interested in modifying or revising it in some way in order to, one, meet body types, but also meet the needs of our students who may have sensory issues. As a teacher who taught 16 years in an elementary school that did not have uniforms, I know the battles that happen with dress codes and how different staff interpret a dress code differently. And so I feel like, hey, maybe a uniform's better because there's less battling. It's a clear-cut thing, much more clear-cut. I know that there can be differentiate interpretations of our uniform, but it happens less. I think looking at the data, the adults, most of them are pretty, you know, in agreement for most things. I know having middle schoolers, they want it changed. Like, middle schoolers all want to embrace their individuality and they want to wear what they want to wear. And so personally, I am more geared towards revising. That's just kind of where I'm at right now as we've gone back and forth.
I'd like to chime in just to throw in a thing here too, as the board determines which direction to go. Remember, uniform and dress code are two different items. We're talking uniform. Dress code still needs to be in place as to what creates that level of modesty or whatever it is we're looking for. So I just want to make sure that distinction exists. So items like tucking in shirts still are considered a dress code type of policy versus, or practice, versus what you wear and how you wear it. Two different things.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Lafitte. You know, I think the biggest way this kind of approached me is, you know, at the end of the day, 71% of our students want change, right? They want change. At the end of the day, we're all here for our kids. We all can't be in this room if they're not students in our schools, if our parents don't send them here. So the message is very loud from our students. They want change. Now, how that change is implemented is where the adults are divided. And I think that is common with anything that changes in our society. Adults will always be divided on how the change should happen. That's happened many times in this very boardroom, a lot. But at the end of the day, we come forward with the solution. But I myself, every time there's career day, I speak to middle school students. I cannot tell you how many times this is the number one thing that gets brought up. How in the world do we get rid of school uniforms? How in the world can we do it? And I think they don't care who I am, what I'm doing, what I talk about, but when I bring up the fact that they actually have an opportunity to be a part of a process to change this, they all got so motivated to see change and to be a part of something. And so I think as the adults in the room, I see the data that our students want change. Now, no question I'm asking myself is how are we going to do that for them, right? And I think, yes, there's going to be a divide among the adults of how we should implement that change, how fast it should go, how slow it should go. But at the end of the day, I think that we should do it for our students because they're demanding that we do it for them. And at the end of the day, this is something that will not change overnight, whether the board chooses to modify or fully move forward with the dress code. But at the end of the day, we're respecting the decision of our students and we're moving forward and allowing them to have that choice. And I think about further like Litchfield and Buckeye on the Southwest Valley, they don't have uniforms. You know, they're not that far from us on the Southwest side in Goodyear and Buckeye. But you come more to the west side, Maryville, West Phoenix, more hard-working people of class communities, they've been structured to be stuck with uniforms. They're in for 20 plus years. And so I think of it more as a societal issue but also more to the fact that a lot of these comments that these kids said is like, why should I have to wear uniforms? I'm not going to wear it in high school. Like, it just, and I think about the fact of how a lot of kids really hinted on points that they don't feel it saves their parents money. You know, if parents are going to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on uniforms, why not just spend $100 on regular clothes? You know, and I think those are a lot of points that not just myself, but my kids brought up. I sat down and I talked to my little brother and sister a lot about this. They are in 5th and 3rd grade right now at Lincoln, and they have very strong feelings. They don't care about how their day at school is, but when you bring up this, they get so motivated and they want to say something on it. And so I think that's the beauty of it, to see that the biggest group that showed up was our kids. They showed up, and we always say, how do we get our kids involved? How do we hear from them? Well, you know, we've heard from our kids, and they've made it loud, and the message is very clear. They want to see change, and I think that's kind of what I want to lead forward with, is leading towards a change for our kids, because they're demanding it. And so I think, based on these groups and these data responses, that we should move forward with a dress code. Not disagreeing on how fast that should be implemented or how slow it should go, but I think we should move in that direction. And I think the message it sends to other West Valley districts is Littleton is willing to take on something that is not a common practice. And we're willing to make change for our kids because we're going to listen to them and do it for them. So that's kind of where I stand on all of this. I really appreciate all the work. It's been years in the making. This data has been needed, and we've seen it. We've heard now, our community's responded. And I feel like we should make that change with our staff along the way, with our community, with our parents. But you know, our kids are demanding it, and they're the ones who have to live through this at the end of the day. They live through it day to day. It's our jobs as adults to regulate it, how it's implemented and how it's not, with the input of our community and our students. So that's kind of how I've been feeling about this whole process, about it. I know there's a lot of strong feelings on a lot of how this should be and how this has been played out. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is something that our kids should have the opportunity to see. Now, if you came to me and you told me only 900 students responded in middle school, and we had over 4,000 parents responded in support of keeping uniforms, then maybe I'd have a little bit of response. But our students outnumbered us on this one. They showed up and they made that change and input. So that's kind of where I'm leading in just my ability, and I think at the end of the day, it gives kids more of a passion to feel more seen, you know. And I think at the end of the day, you know, in terms of bullying and all of that, you know, somebody's still going to be bullied whether they wear a plain polo or not. They're still going to be bullied because it's all down to the individuality of who that student is, how they look like. It's not about what they wear. I think that's a lot of my, you know, feedback on it as we move forward.
So the administration is looking for some direction from us. Do you feel like you have enough direction, or would you like us to continue to discuss?
Yes and no. You know, for me, I look at it a few different ways, and so do I think I have enough? Possibly, but I think the change that has to shift how that's communicated, because right now, for me, my focus is always on students, culture, learning. How are we building? And you know, uniforms to me, either way. I've been in organizations where we've gone either way, so I don't. My kids have worn them. My kids have not worn them, so I can go either way. But I haven't heard definitively of yes uniforms, no uniforms, modified uniforms. What I can communicate is most board policies regarding uniform are structured so that the superintendents develop and enforce policies and regulations pertaining to student dress code. And really it's around safety. And so for me, if the idea is to say, okay, we want to move away from uniforms, but now the next step becomes, what does that look like? So that then moves towards the board saying, hey, we need to look at policy then, and what is standard policy around that? I mean, it's for me to come back every month, every quarter, or every semester to discuss uniforms takes us away from student achievement, from making sure our buildings are safe, making sure those, for me, I don't care either way.
I can say that while I'm partial to modifying our uniforms, if we were to get rid of uniforms and go to a dress code, I can support that. I'm not like staunchly in one area or the other. And I feel like while we sit on a board and we make policy, the administration has to enact it and enforce it. And if that means that we need to allow you to make a dress code or decide how this goes, this is not something that I want to spend monthly talking about. It's not something that I feel like needs the whole board to decide on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think based on the discussion that's been had and a lot of these student comments that were brought up from our students, I would say we direct the administration to move forward with number 3. And now I think leave that up to our administration on terms of, like Amy's mentioned, how we move forward with number 3, remove the uniform requirement. And I feel like they come back to us, whether that's in 4 to 5 months, say, hey, we drafted up a subcommittee of parents, students, and staff. They came together with a dress code. This is how it looks like, and it's going to be implemented in the next school year. I think if that's something that the administration can take on and then come back to the board and maybe next year in the springtime and say, hey, we took direction from the board and, we presenting this to you guys to say, this is what our community, our parents, and our students want to see in a dress code without uniforms, and then kind of having that discussion.
So I agree. My thoughts about it is that I wonder, would it be possible for us to have an option? I know some parents do feel that the uniforms, for whatever reason, are best for their family, but then maybe for there to be an option where it's not mandatory. So maybe sometimes, if that's what is best for your family for whatever reason, you can continue to do that, knowing that you'll be in compliance, but then also there'll be an option where maybe they don't have to wear uniforms. So so I don't want to necessarily get rid of them completely, because maybe that is, for whatever reason, someone's family dynamic where it's best for them, where they're getting uniforms secondhand, and this is what they receive, and so this is what they have.
Just to clarify what you're saying, Rachel, are you saying allowing some schools to have uniforms, like that's their uniform, and then some schools aren't?
Something like that, definitely something, the administration will know best, but just something where I don't want it to be necessarily where we move so far to the opposite end, and then there are students who they only have uniforms, and now they're like, oh man, this is really, not good for me. But then also, I don't want other students, because it's not for my family, and this is about all of us collectively, but for my family, uniforms are not beneficial. It's easier for the children. And also, I notice when we have dress down days for the kids, how excited they are to be able to showcase their fashions. They're excited to go to school. They do better that day because they're feeling confident, because what they're wearing is indicative of who they are, and they do better those days. So I want that to be an option for kids to have that, but then I don't necessarily move so far to the other side where kids who only have uniforms are now like, well, what do I wear to school?
Yeah, I agree, Rachel. I think that's a really good point. But I think at the end of the day, if we have a dress code, right, I think that gives the kids opportunity to wear whatever they want, right? And I think they can come in wearing a polo or wearing anything that they want. I think that's kind of what a dress code would do for our kids. Yeah, option 3.
So I agree with all of you guys. I noticed when they talked about, like, if they want to wear, if we just did a certain school, it could mess with our school choice, because some kids may not want to go there if they have to wear a uniform. I like number 3. I have always been a non-uniform person. And I feel that it does give kids that individuality. I do believe, though, because of the way the staff and the parents felt, I agree we need to acknowledge our students, but I agree that I feel we also need to acknowledge the parents and the staff because, yes, kids want their individuality, but kids don't always understand. I would like to see a committee made up of parents and staff and, you know, admin and community members. I would like to see, you know, something like that with students so we could come up with if we do go with a defined dress code, we could come up with something that's going to be easily, I want to say, implemented so that it's not just more work for the staff to take on and more work for parents to have to do to find certain things, if that makes sense.
I echo what Linda said. I think the biggest thing is that, you know, change is never easy, but we need to communicate that very effectively to our community and to our students and to our staff and to our parents. But also we need to make opportunities for them to be a part of it along the way. Right, this isn't a top-down thing, this is a bottom-up thing. So I agree with Linda, we should form a committee, direct the administration to form a committee over the next couple of months and have that figured out by the spring of next year, and then bring that back as a board action or discussion on the results of that committee so that we can hopefully make a full decision on a dress code policy by the next school year. Just so we give our parents and our community that time, and then we're able to communicate that effectively to them. But also, I do agree with Linda. We do need to acknowledge our parents and our staff, which is why I think it's so crucial that we take them along the way. I'm going to say that. We have to take our parents and students along the way. Otherwise, this could just end up being very chaotic of a change. So, Amy, I know Dr. Lafitte said something, so go ahead.
I would just say, and this is just me speaking as myself, I feel like if we were to, in the future, direct administration to form a dress code, I would assume that the administration would reach out to parents and staff to form that dress code. Yeah. So while I'm all for giving everyone their piece and their ability to speak up, I would make the assumption that if as a board we said, hey, you're making a dress code, this is our policy, they are going to take in that input from all the stakeholders. And so I don't know if we have to formally make a committee. That's just my thought. Like, that's what they would do, I would assume, in getting feedback on how to write a dress code.
Thank you for that clarification, President Sosnick. I think at the end of the day, as long as our community has that opportunity to be a part of creating a dress code, it's all I want to make clear. However the administration does that they can do it as long as they communicate that to the board along the way of how they're doing it. I think would just be a little helpful, not month by month, but just maybe keep us updated how they've done with this process in terms of how they're communicating that to the board. But I do agree with the majority of my colleagues that we should move forward with number 3.
Dr. Lafitte, do you feel like you have the direction you need?
Yeah, we're good moving forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item C, board conference opportunities.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. So several meetings ago, we discussed policy BIBA, I believe, and we discussed opportunities for board members to attend conferences. So we said we'd come back with a listing of several conferences that seemed really focused on work of the governing board to give the board members an opportunity to review and discuss to see if there are professional developments they'd like to attend. Then what we could do is put all that information together, come back at a future date for an action item to approve whichever professional developments the board would like to go to in future dates. If there are other things that come up, we can still have those discussions, but this is just a generic list of items that we were able to find.
Just for clarification, previously what we would do is if we found a conference we wanted to go to, we had kind of like each board member was allotted a certain amount of money, and that was their pot, their little pot to use if there's a conference that they want to do. Are we no longer doing that?
Right. So while there's still funding attached to that, it's still what we're trying to do is just identify those items now so that we can go ahead and get our budgeting and everything in line. And so for us, what would be great is to say, hey, if 4 of the board members identified those, we'd bring those and just have those all approved so that moving forward, we know the exact budget, we have everything planned for, and it's already approved so we can move forward.
Okay, so essentially you want us, to Rachel's point, you want us to just tell you what conferences the board sees interested in, and then we would just.
Right, just as a,
Go
yeah,
to those.
just as a board, have
Okay.
that discussion on which ones. So example, someone may want to go to National School Board Association Conference, and there may be 1 or 2 board members who say, hey, I'd like to go to that as well, because then it gives us kind of a frame for how we want to structure these moving forward.
Okay.
I can say for me, it's very hard for me to tell you which ones I'm interested in because I like to hear what the breakout sessions or the keynote speakers are. Just based on this list, I would probably be pretty interested in the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, just because so many of our students are of Latino or Hispanic descent. So that's the one that kind of stood out to me. I have been to NSBA conferences, and there was some good found there, but not, at least the one I attended, I did not come back feeling like it was worth the money we spent to send me there.
For me, I think the one that kind of sticked out just for me was the Annual Advocacy Institute for the NSBA. I've heard a lot of board members have gone to that conference, and especially now with all of the federal noise, just put it one way, regarding education, public education, I think more than ever, that one's really important for board members to go to lobby and to work with their Congress people related to federal funding for school districts. So that one recently, I've gone to CUBE, which relates to equity and inclusion, basically, primarily for people of color board members, primarily, for Urban Institute. That one has always been the one I've gone to the most the last 2 years. So this year I was thinking of going to the advocacy one, just given all of the federal stuff that's going on. So, it's the number 3 on the left. They have numbers. It's number 3. The National School Board Association, and then the Annual Advocacy, yeah. It's in February next year. And I know, I texted Ada about it. I know the early bird registration ends mid-November for that one. So I think we have a board meeting before that. That's the one that I was personally interested in the most, just personally me.
I don't have one yet. I have to keep reading.
So, Madam President, members of the board, what we could do is, we've identified a couple, we could bring those forward. And then, as you go in and to these, Ms. Sellis has done a great job of, she's added links to those. You can actually go to those and identify those conferences and get additional information as well. So, we can take a few other things at a different time, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Liffey. Go ahead.
I just want to ask, like, to Rachel's point in the beginning, I'm sorry, to a point of clarification. So when, in going forward in the future, so for example, if a conference comes up, January next year, we want to go, do we go moving forward, we want to just have a board meeting about a conference, or do we want to just let our secretary know
So the idea is, and this is one thing I'd like to move more towards, is trying to bring items, whether it's governing board, staff in general, trying to bring a larger slate of items, because then it kind of calendars it out and it aligns the budget a little bit better. For me, the budgeting part of the process is extremely important. And I know oftentimes what happens is things will come up and you'll constantly hear, I want to go to this, I want to go to this, regardless of who it is. And so I want to kind of make sure we can kind of align that to make sure it aligns with all of our goals and the things that we're trying to do as an organization.
Okay. All right, moving on to item D. It is board self-evaluation. So we as board members and Dr. Lafitte, every 2 years we evaluate ourselves as a board and how we think we're doing. And so we all have the report that's here. You can see the years we've taken it. And then just kind of looking over our data, blue and green. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Let me see. So looking at our data, we're going to look at what do we see, what does the data suggest, and identify any goal areas that we may have, and then potentially build 2 or 3 goals using the SMART goal framework. So blue and green is always or most of the time. Yellow and red are some of the time, never, and then black is don't know. So one thing that when I was looking at this, kind of reflected on is when you compare our 25 data to our 23 data, only 3 of the current board members took this. So I think while the data is interesting, it's not exactly the same group of people every time taking this. And then if you go as far as 21, I believe I'm the only one that's still currently on the board who did this. So I just kind of wanted to have time to look at this and kind of have a discussion about it. Standard one was what's our conduct and our ethics, and do we provide responsible school district and governance? That seems to be pretty common. I mean, the study for the past 3 times we've taken this, if you combine both always and most of the time. When you get to standard 2, set and anyone on the board or anyone feel free to ask questions or give comments. Set and communicate high expectations for student learning with clear goals and plans for meeting those. We did go from 96% agree always or most of the time to 86. So that was kind of a dip that we have there from 23 to 25. Strand 3, structure, create conditions district-wide for student and staff success. We did go from 96 in 23 to 75 for always or most of the time. Standard 4, accountability, holds school district accountable for meeting student learning expectations. We did go from 94% to 65 in that always or most of the time. And then standard 5, advocacy, we went from 82 to 65, from 23 to 25. I think it's always good to reflect and evaluate how we're doing. So I appreciate that we have this data to look at. Any comments, questions?
Thank you, Amy. I think going through, I think what the biggest thing that I noticed was question 5, a little more down under the chart, just going like a little bit down, how comparing to 2019 to 2025, how much we've grown on what we think is commitment to a clear and shared purpose. We've actually grown on that as a board. Amy, you will be the only person I think was on the board at that time. But I think we've grown even prior to the last time that we did that, with 3 of us being on the board in 2023 doing that, in terms of a shared purpose. So I thought that was a little bit of a growth for the board. I thought another interesting one. Oh, Linda, go ahead. Okay, yeah, I'm just going through and pointing out the interesting questions that I thought had the most quote-unquote controversial data from our responses. I thought also, too, for question 7, that one was pretty interesting, gathering input prior to making crucial decisions. We've grown a lot since 2019 to 2025, and even from 2023 to 2025, we've grown a little bit. Still most the same, but a little bit of progress. Thought that was pretty interesting, but I won't give any more pointer questions. You can go, Linda.
I just had a quick question. The don't know, is that taken into the percentage?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. What if, like, someone doesn't know, or like they're brand new? Is that like a bad thing that?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think knowing that we had brand new board members filling this, right? You don't know, but I think that is also could be a growth opportunity in the fact that as a board member, you don't know. Like, we need to make sure you have a feeling about that or an opinion, or you know, give you the information you need so that you can have an opinion on that. Is a growth point. Is there anything that stood out to any of the board members that we feel like we need to make goals upon? I know from many, many years ago when we took this, one of the things that as a board we felt, we evaluated ourselves and felt like we were not active on all the campuses enough. We weren't present. And so from that became our board goal of being at 2 school sites every quarter and 1 ASBA event every semester. And that's kind of been an underlying goal of all of us as a board. I don't think this year we went over that with any of our new board members. So Linda, this may be surprising to you that you had this goal.
When's the last time you reviewed that?
Oh, it's been many years since we reviewed that. 2 years ago when we filled this out, as a board, we did not want to make any new goals. We kept our same goals. So again, we make our goals based on this. So.
Did we share? I don't know, do we have that data from the previous? Well, I guess we're a new year, so we're almost through a full first year of a new board. Have we tracked that data based on our goals yet? I don't know.
Usually Ada provides it when we do the end of the whole big data day where we get the binder and we go through it all. Mm-hmm. It's always in there. I don't think we've done very well in our goals, so it doesn't get presented in the very quick presentation.
So Madam President, when you brought up, what was brought up were opportunities to be on campus, I think those are things that as we go through the weekly update, and if you notice in those updates, there are opportunities for events that are happening on campuses, within the community. Example, on Friday, I believe there was a Hispanic Heritage event at Fine Arts. So those are opportunities that board members have to be present, be visible, to engage with the community, engage with students and staff. There are numerous opportunities that take place throughout each week. All of our schools are doing a really good job of putting things out there so that we can have participation from both the community, board, and so on. So those opportunities do exist.
Okay, so my goal is to work on the areas that are Black, because I'm pretty sure that that's me that put don't know. So that will be my goal, is to mark these down and work on them so that I don't have those marks on there anymore and I do understand more.
Well, I thought what was interesting, going on question 44, all the way down, have a long-term facilities plan in place for construction and maintenance. I think more than half of the board didn't even put a don't know, or just some of the time. So I think, like, moving forward, Dr. Lafee, like, if we could be made, like, aware of that, like, is there a facilities plan in place for construction and maintenance? Just like something that really stood out to me for that one.
Yep, Madam President, Mr. Sinisteros. Yeah, those are the things that we're working on. So part of the process here, and actually kind of even going back to the uniform piece, for me, it's what are the things that we truly have to begin to focus on and put in place. And so I'm really trying to focus on a lot of those components. I know we're working on facilities. We're working on ensuring that the facilities are up to par. You know, I want our students to be in top-notch facilities, academics, and so we're putting all those components together. One thing that I know we're working on that kind of ties into this is a long-term strategic plan, which will begin to identify those components. And again, those types of things take committees as well. And so for me, part of the work is not to either dilute our staff or the community and over inundate them with committees and surveys. And so how do we strategically do that? And so that's been part of my thing that I've been trying to communicate is really, you know, just if there's some trust in the administration to work through these processes, communicate those, put those, whether it's in an update, information items, discussion items, or even in some of the action items that come to the board, we try to address those.
Maybe in a board update, could we get a check-in on our board goals and how we're doing? And just a review of what our board goals are.
Yep, we can look for that. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on this item? All right, moving on to our next item, which is board norms and commitments. We had a special meeting where we met with Julie Bacon from ASBA and kind of came up with a list of expectations and shared agreements that we have between the administration and the board and ourselves on the board. And so kind of where we want to go with this is having a conversation, well, one, reviewing everything that we decided on that night, because it was kind of a lengthy night, and then seeing if there is the ability for us to discuss and maybe form a solid 4, maybe 5 norms that we can hold ourselves accountable to as norms. This is a discussion item. I want to be very aware that Mr. Nielsen couldn't be here, so I don't want to pass anything that he really, without him having his ability to speak on and reflect on. So, looking at this, the very first one, we have board superintendent communications. We have the expectations we worked with Julie on, and then our shared agreements. I'm not going to read them all to you. Then we have the same thing with emergency communication protocols. And then superintendent board communications as well, again. And then board agenda agreements, broken down to current board agenda items and future. And then preparing for meetings. And then during the meeting agreements and after board meeting agreements, and then site visit agreements. And then board community communications. And obviously this is 6 pages long, so I would love to, make it more concise or just.
I'm 100% honest, I didn't know we had this. I didn't know. I mean, I knew this was a thing, but I don't think we've ever reviewed it. At least as long as I've been on the board.
This is just the summary from the October.
The summary. Okay,
it's a summary
so this is
of
what
that meeting
this is
that
what
we
they
had.
made. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just showing you the summary of what ASBA did for us.
I mean, I think it's pretty good. I do agree on the first one, the regular communication for the superintendent weekly update. I do love the new format that our former interim superintendent, Dr. Cole, came up with. I think that was a good format. I know Dr. Freeman sometimes would a little ramble on in there, but I think it's been very effective, the weekly update, in terms of information we get in there, and I think that's kind of one of the biggest ways the administration's able to communicate with us. And I think that also has established trust with them, with answering our questions and things that we want to know that are going on in the district. So I think it looks pretty good.
I feel like this was a pretty good summary of the meeting that we had. I just kind of want, not that any of us are breaking any of these currently or will, but just kind of keeping it fresh in our mind, the agreements that we had, and then seeing if there's a way to make this more concise or just maybe more clear, or if there's any unclarity in there. Because it was a long meeting that got summarized to 6 pages.
Okay, so for me, it's pretty clear, the verbiage and everything else as to all the different ones in here. I don't know how to make it more concise. I mean, to like slim it down from 6 pages.
So just a thought, I think that, Julie Bacon did an amazing job with really just condensing everything that we met with her about that evening. But my only thought is that with regard to the reference it makes when board members visit a school, and then, of course, the manner in which they conduct themselves, maybe we can provide clarification as it relates to if they're there in the capacity of a parent or if they're in the capacity of a board member. I think maybe that's the gray area, just to be very, very clear when it comes to that. Because there are times when we as parents will go up there and we're wearing our parent hat, and so we're engaging in that in that manner. But then if we're there as a board member, it needs to be, clear that, I'm not a board member, I'm here as a parent. Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Rachel. I know that there's many times I have been on campus that, okay, yeah. But I also know that while I may be there as a parent, everyone still sees me as a board member as well. Like, I'm not there in my official capacity, but it's not.
I'm lucky. Nobody ever knows who I am.
Oh,
Like,
see?
they never know.
I try to hide and go to an assembly and get called out.
Keep it incognito.
So,
Yeah, I think the side visit agreements, I think maybe keeping this in mind at our next board meeting related to a agenda item related to visit of sites, the badges as well. I think that could be something we could attach to have that just on display and reminder when the board makes that decision to have badge access. I think that would be a good thing to add in there as well, and then rewrite that communication based on how that goes out. And I think also after board meeting agreements, I'm gonna be very honest. Number one, I have broken many times. I've had my opinions, and I've voiced my opinions on whether I agree with the majority of the board's decision or not. And so I feel like, I don't want to say undermine, but I want to say I do agree that board members, and I think it is board norms. Like, board members will support, instead of saying support, I think we'll respect, I think board members should yes, we're gonna all not agree always, but we shouldn't, even if board members have disagreements, we shouldn't force them to always have to respect of the will of the majority of the board. Like, each individual board member should have that ability to have their expressions, because at the end of the day, they were elected to have those expressions from the community and the public. So I like number one. I love the idea of it, but personally, I don't feel too. Yeah.
I think it's very hard. I don't ever want to limit someone's free speech. Like, I don't ever want to tell someone they can't say how they feel, because we are elected as representatives of different groups in our community, right? I do think, though, that sometimes if you leave a board meeting and say, as a board member, I disagree with this, while that is, in my opinion, perfectly fine to say in the dais when we are discussing, leaving a board meeting and saying something like that kind of makes it feel like, one, you're heard. I mean, I'm conflicted, because it allows our community to know, like, hey, there are other people who believe what I believe, and I don't agree with what the board decided. But it does, I think, build a perception of the board is not cohesive, and that things can keep coming back and decisions can keep being changed. And there have been many times that I've, disagreed with what the board has said, and I just kind of go along my way and I don't say anything publicly in a public format. Like, it may be a conversation I have with someone, but I caution us on making a public statement saying I disagree. But I also don't want to stop someone from speaking their opinion. Like, I don't ever want to do that. So I think that comes back to kind of a personal choice on what you are comfortable with, and if you feel like you are meeting the agreement and the norms there.
So I guess it really comes down to, just like you said, it's a fine balance of having a level of decorum and not, engaging in a divisive way when we are a cohesive unit. But I think it's also important for people to maintain that level of trust in each individual that they voted to their board, understand that person didn't necessarily sell themselves out or sell them out, So I think, like, we might make a decision as a board that certain members of the board do not agree with, and so the community then is aware of these decisions being made. I don't necessarily think that we would be doing anyone a service by saying, "Oh no, I agree," because then they're like, "Wait a minute, like, what's this really about?" So I think as long as we're engaging in a manner that is not being divisive or is not trying to push our own agenda, against the board, it's important for us to stay true to ourselves and our level of morality and what we stand for as individuals, because ultimately that's why our community voted for us to be in this position. So it's about finding that balance and having decorum.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that, we always want boards to move forward, united, 3 votes is 3 votes, and if there's always going to be 3 votes for that issue, it's going to stay until the board changes, depending on how the community and people feel about it. I personally don't like having the, stay silent. I agree with not undermined, but I think board members should be able to respectfully dissent, with the board's decision. I've done it many times, personally, and because it's what I believe in as an individual board member, and I respect the will of the majority of the board, but will still speak how I feel about that outcome. So,
And Marcus, if I came across as like, I don't want you to speak your mind, that is not what I was trying to say. I think everyone has to leave and feel like, did they meet and follow the norms and the agreements that we had? And if you leave here feeling like you did, wholeheartedly, great. Like, I'm not saying you didn't. Like, you as a person are accepting these norms, and if you feel like you're meeting these norms, great. I'm speaking for myself and like what I feel like. Am I meeting the norms and what do I feel like? If I'm agreeing to this, then what that is interpreted as in my mind could be completely different than what it is in yours. And we're both representatives of different communities and different parts of communities, right? And so I'm not disagreeing with what you've done or have done. Like, I'm just saying I do what I feel like is good for me, and like if I'm living up to it, and you do what you're doing, and I'm not going to judge for you what your agreement to the norm is or not.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like, I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm making sense, but
I mean, even then, I'm gonna be, very blunt, like, it does sound like just based on language, we would shame individual board members from,
right.
dissenting with the decision of the board.
So
And I agree, like, I want board members to do that, because it's the beauty of democracy, so I agree with what you said though, Amy. Like, do you leave, do you respect, colleagues, and, I may not disagree with our decisions, but I respect you all very much as individuals and as colleagues, and so. Yeah,
how
agreed.
would you feel more comfortable? How could we reword this so you would feel more comfortable?
Board members, well, I mean, the staff, is there a reason why we put staff in there? I mean, I
This
guess
is-
staff because they are the ones affected by the decision, if it's a certain
This-
thing related to them.
This is Julie Bacon's summary. So this
Julie
is not
Bacon's
something that we
Okay.
or anyone in Littleton wrote. So I couldn't
Okay.
tell you why.
I guess, being, say, progressive, board members and staff, will respect the decision of the board, but something along the lines of the board will also respect the ability of staff or board members to respectfully dissent
Okay.
on the board's decisions. Does that make, Dr. Lafitte, does that sound too blunt or something along that lines?
No, I think from our meeting, Madam President, Board Member Sinisteros, I think what, as we went through our meeting that evening, what the intent was from the language and how, as we were discussing and it was written, was for us to understand that as a group, once a decision is made, that is the decision at that point. And whether we agree with or disagree with the decision, we move forward with the decision. And so you brought up staff, so I'll use staff as the example. Tonight we were discussing uniforms. I'm just going to use that because we're here tonight. If I were strongly one way or the other, if I were strongly keep uniforms and I was being told get rid of uniforms, my responsibility would be to say the decision or the will was to move forward this way. So for me, it's to leave the room and not say the board voted that way. It's for me to say our organization is moving this way. And so that's how I interpret. And I look at it that way because I never want to show dissension. And I say that from this perspective. I know as an organization, during the finance piece, we had discussions about future work, bonding, things like that. I think the more we dissent from one another, the community views dissent. And then the questions come in of, well, should we or shouldn't we, and why? Versus we communicate that these are the things that we'll communicate, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what it looks like moving forward. Me, it's just purely about communicating that we made the decision, we live with it, we move forward, we keep going. And I think that was Julie's, as she documented what we had discussed, I think that was her intent with the language.
Linda?
Yeah, I know, Linda.
I haven't said anything, and I apologize for that. I'm was trying to get my words together, what to say. But Dr. Lafitte, I think you said it very well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, these are board norms, that's why I was confused in the beginning of staff is in there. I think this agreement, right, is supposed to be for the superintendent and the board. So I do agree with you, Dr. Lafitte, that, but also I feel like I'm somebody who always wants to not limit people from expressing whether they agree or not with the decision, right? I don't want to create an environment that is like that, where we can't prevent people from dissenting from a decision, you know? And I agree with you, right? From the public's perspective, we always have to come together and make a decision. And I think with through thick or thin, our board has. We went through a superintendent search, and then we came through with a decision as a board, even though there were a lot of, again, dissents and disagreements from staff and community and board members on that process. So I feel like that's just very much of an example of just how I feel. I just want us to respect dissent, but also just say that this dissent is not undermining. You know, it's respectful dissent, right? Be like, I didn't agree with this vote, but hey, we're going to move forward as a district united, you know, and move forward through it as an issue. You know, like for example, with the uniforms, you know, people are not going to agree with what the board just did, and we're going to respect their decision and their dissent to not agree with what the board, you know, move forward as an option with uniforms. But we want people to be able to express themselves and be able to have that. And that may sound very, you know, progressive and radical and not, you know, not a common practice of a school board. But I feel like that is just kind of where I'm coming from with board members and just creating an environment where we can, you know, respectfully dissent, you know.
So, Madam President, what I would just say is just, if you want to remove the words "or stay silent" and just keep not undermine. It doesn't say anything about dissent. It just says board members and staff will support the decision of the board. That's the verbiage that's there. And it's the term that I think is really the term we're all trying to just define and agree on is not undermine. I don't know if anyone said truly stay silent. The word is there. But really when you look outside of the parentheses, board members and staff will support the decision of the board, the parentheses piece being the not undermine. So it's to not leave and talk about how bad it is or bad of a decision or whatever. So, or do something to destroy the decision. That's really, undermine would be something to destroy that decision or to impinge on the decision and the actions taking place moving forward.
Okay, so this is nothing we're voting on tonight. This
Yeah,
is
it's
just a
just
discussion,
discussion.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, are we, as a general, comfortable with just taking out the parentheses or stay silent? Not undermine, like?
And
just leave it up?
that's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, what really caught my eye was just to stay silent. I don't think anybody should be forced to stay silent if they don't respect the decision of the board. You know, doesn't sound very democratic, so, yeah.
Anything else on this that we feel like we want to have a conversation about, or maybe we were summarized too quickly? Okay. All right. Well then, is there a motion for adjournment?
I motion we adjourn.
Linda, is there a second?
I'll second.
Marcus, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned at 7:29.